5 will begin shortly, so please get inside the room. Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your coffee break. So next, we will move on to the technical session 5, which will focus on the economics of natural productivity and pond aquaculture, exploring whether it is worthwhile for small-scale farmers. And today, we are privileged to have the esteemed panels of moderators for these sessions. Allow me to introduce Professor Wenbo Shang from Shanghai Ocean University, China. Dr. Jaruha Islam from GIZ, India, who will be joining us today. And lastly, Dr. Rashakon Washaradeshkun from INVE Aquaculture, Thailand. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, organizer. Good morning, everyone. I'm Wenbo Zhang from Shanghai Ocean University. This is my great pleasure to moderate this session together with Dr. Jahar Islam from GS India. This session is about economics of natural productivity and pond aquaculture. Is it worth for small-scale farmers? And now we have 4 speakers. May I remind you, we have 25 minutes for each presentation, and so we can have 5 minutes for questions. The first speaker of this session, Dr. Francis Murray. Yeah, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I've got the wrong presentation. Francis, just check the mic for us as well. Hello? Now it is. Does the pointer work? Oh, it does. Good. Very good. Thanks. Okay, I better get on already 3 minutes down. Okay, so I'm going to talk on the influence of environmental certification and rating schemes in fragmented supply chains. So essentially, supply chains with lots of smallholders in them. And I'm going to be presenting a case study of health management outcomes in global farm tilapia sectors. So, contents. Firstly, I'm going to look at certification and rating schemes, how they work together. I'll explain what they are, how they're differentiated, and look at the synergies, challenges that they both present, and the synergies between them. I'll then go on to look at tilapia certification and rating global trends. And then I'm going to move on to looking at a few examples of outcomes in cage lake reservoir systems. Why? Because as you'll see, most certification is actually in lake reservoir systems, despite most tilapia production globally being in ponds. And then I'm going to go on to look at the case study, specific case study based on audit data from ASC tilapia standard audits of globally of certified tilapia farms, focusing specifically on the health management performance. So I'm going to be looking at across the piece at water quality and health management because the triad host, pathogen, environmental interactions. And finally, I'll wrap up with just a few comments on smallholder inclusion. Across the piece, we're going to be looking at the role, the impacts on smallholder inclusion or exclusion, barriers to entry to certification, and what's being done to try and cover this missing base of smallholders. Okay, so I'll look at smallholder and group certification, and then link to that the potential for sort of linking that to area-based managements, particularly moving back to this challenge of tilapia production, open cage systems in reservoirs, where the concern is not the primary productivity in the pond, it's the environmental loading of nutrients and the eutrophication. Okay. So a little bit of background. By certified sustainability standards, we're talking about voluntary, third-party verified norms, multi-attribute. Here we're principally interested in the environmental outcomes, but they also assure social performance. Food safety is fundamental, embedded if not explicitly in all the standards, and increasingly animal welfare. Okay. These standards fall under the ISO 1400 range of environmental standards, particularly the Type 1 standards. So the key attributes are their third-party nature, okay? The fact that they provide a very complex accreditation process that assures the credibility of the standard. And this is what makes them so valuable in the marketplace, because this is part of a market-based form of governance. And it's this essential attribute that really differentiates the standards I'm going to talk about from national standards, which you can think of as second party. So it doesn't matter how good they are, that third party attribute is what really creates the demand for these standards in the marketplace. All right, and they form as, they can serve as either business to business or business to community, business to consumer. I'm going to argue that the main way that these standards work is in the court of a public opinion, okay? They're evidence-based, but really what they're doing, the main driver in the marketplace, why people will pay for these extra assurance costs, is that they help indemnify commercial brands against adverse reputational risks from civil society campaigns, okay? So it's this court of a public opinion and the provision of evidence to try and backstop public opinion and discourse in the public domain. Alongside these certification systems, we have what are called seafood guidance and rating schemes. So I'm going to just abbreviate this to SGRS as we go forward. These are less costly and sectoral ratings, okay? They're involuntary, third-party assessments. There's no audit. It'll be a sectoral level, so broader brush, but clearly their geographic scope is much wider as a result, although they provide less assurance in various dimensions. They're only farm level. Certification systems are potentially farm, feed, seed, processing. They're vertically integrated, if you like. So SGRS work at national or regional sectoral scales, and I'm going to be focusing on these three schemes, two certification schemes, the ASC and the Best Aquaculture Practices, GSA Best Aquaculture Practices certification schemes, and the Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch. Why? Because the main market for certified tilapia is in the United States, and these have got the most leverage, and practically everything that's sold will fall under these ratings or certification schemes. So the SGRS generally work on a kind of scoring system, which is ultimately aggregated up to give you a kind of traffic light score, whereas in the certification systems, you're going to be assigned against detailed, disaggregate, granular compliance against multiple environmental requirements, social requirements potentially, and latterly welfare. So this schema is really, there's a kind of theory of change around certification that it's about consumers making ethical choices at the till. I think it's more complicated than that. It's hugely complex, and there's a lot of evidence to say that consumers are still primarily interested in food safety and price. Really, it's about this indemnification against reputational risks, and I'd suggest that it's brands that really, as the choice editors, that are creating the demand for this. And most of the demand comes from larger brands in the retail sectors, less penetration of certification into more fragmented food service sectors. Okay, so just a few attributes. Certification, it's unitary. It works at the enterprise level. It's based on regular, typically annual audits, and that they lead to time-bound corrective actions agreed with a client, with a certified participant, against identified non-conformities, okay? And those have to be addressed, otherwise the ultimate leverage is loss of certification. They provide multiple levels of assurance. They're third party, and the third parties that do the auditing, the conformity assessment bodies, are subject to audits themselves by accreditation bodies, and so it goes on. There may be certification systems such as ISEAL, which ASC, for example, itself commits to in terms of the actual certification process. They are potentially vertically integrated, some more than others, so they could potentially cover feed, the seed, farming, processing, and they also must address critically for smallholders this huge problem of chain of custody, which becomes exponentially more complicated as we work down into the more fragmented smallholder supply chains. The problem, high assurance costs. This costs money, a lot of money, and the marginal costs are much higher for smallholder. So you can also, and there's a critique of certification, as it constituting yet another non-tariff barrier for smallholder participation, particularly into international trade. And remember, seafood has this attribute of being one of the most internationally traded commodities. 50% plus is traded, and a lot of that is coming from aquaculture. SGRS, multi-year sectoral reviews, maybe 2-3 years, possibly a year, only working at the environment, on the environment and production level only. They communicate relative performance. The scope is great because you can do whole sectors, as I say. But another interesting attribute of these, and I'm going to come on to this with the synergies, is that they deal with relative performance of species and systems. Because they come up with scores, they, if not explicitly, they frame the question, is tilapia more sustainable than shrimp? Now, these are questions that we don't normally touch on, but it is embedded in the SGRS, okay? And this afternoon, when we're going to talk about global boundaries, perhaps this is something we need to discuss, however sensitive it is. All right, so we bring in this relative comparison through SGRS, the way that they work through scoring. All right, they take a position as well, whereas certification is agnostic on species and system types. You will basically be calibrated within those groups and perform against a baseline. Within SGRS, a position is taken that open systems are inherently more environmentally risky than closed production. So cages tend to be downgraded, closed systems come up, regardless of their intensification, their embedded food or energy, the wider life cycle analysis components. They also have a very strong advocacy role. Monterey Bay is like ASC, like BSA, they're not for profits, but they have a very strong, and they take a strong interest in participating in regular stakeholder reviews in the ongoing revision of standard certification requirements. So the final point is that because they're sectoral, they don't reward individual performance in otherwise badly performing sectors, which is a big problem. So if you're doing well in another red-lighted sector, there's a problem. You're not being rewarded. So the fact that certification and rating schemes are working more closely together is one way of overcoming that problem. So certification schemes tend to say, we'll traffic light red, don't eat it, good alternative orange, best green. And they will give certification within a bad sector. They'll say, unless it's certified, and we'll give it a good alternative at least, or possibly a green. Okay, so both are culture-specific and system and species-specific, although, as I say, SGRS do offer that relative comparison. They're all benchmarked against international normative standards, and there's formal benchmarking process. I know we've got people here involved in the Global Seafood Sustainability Initiative. I'll say a little bit more later. All of them are challenged with limited consideration of cumulative impacts. You can consider this in sectoral schemes, but the evidence base tends to be quite thin in both cases, and that's a challenge I'm going to return to at the end. In terms of synergies, key things that are happening are data sharing. Certification schemes generate an awful lot of information that's being shared with SGRS to then feed into their actual rating schemes as well as the third-party assessments. Cooperation on aquaculture improvement programs, which are either seen as a pathway to certification for smaller threshold entities or as a more philanthropic way just for non-for-profits to provide some benefit to the non-certifiable, the very small-scale sectors. And as SGRS, the model that we're going to be looking at, the Monterey Bay, I'm going to be specifically focusing on these standards. You can see the logos because they are the main standards that are operating in the US market. So Monterey Bay specifically recognizes ASC, GSA BAP, but also natural and organic. It also does fair trade, but there's a very small amount of certification under fair trade. So these are the standards that it recognizes because they're relevant to this particular certification-centric market where most tilapia, certified tilapia, is flowing. Okay? And it also means cages are less likely to be downgraded because if you are a certified cage producer under the certification system, then you're at least a good alternative under the SGRS. So just back again to this idea of smallholder inclusion. What are the incentives for certification? I've said of this whole idea of indemnifying reputational risk, but why as a producer would you get certified? It's nice to think that there's a price premium, but whereas that might be built in for fair trade, and there's likely to be potentially a premium for organic, but not necessarily, it's not guaranteed for this more commodity level certification. So what is happening? Why would you get certified? I would argue that one of the main things is access to otherwise inaccessible markets. So, you may, if you're in the United States and you want to sell shrimp in, 50% of the market would be Walmart's and Darden supermarket chain. You've got to get certified to have access to big parts of the market. All right. Also, reduce production costs through great eco-efficiency. It's the bottom line. By performing well environmentally and socially, you do better economically as well. And then finally, for larger entities, certification can be used to achieve social license for wider strategic objectives. So some of you may be familiar with the Global Salmon Initiative, which kind of ticks this box. So it's about social license, e.g. for new site licenses. But all these things, as I say, present a significant barrier to smallholder participation in increasingly globalized markets. And it's important to remember that 70 to 80% of production, particularly here in Asia, is still smallholder. So with a certification in these environments. All right, I just put this up to highlight some of the key challenges. Three broad challenges, just going back to some of the points I've made. The first is that because of this indemnification, this CCM, I call it this certification-centric market with these civil society and affluence attributes, it excludes large non-export sectors. And for tilapia, one of the most widely farmed, that's a big deal. The unitary farm level scope as well, particularly when we see a lot of certification in open water bodies, means that there is a failure to address cumulative impacts at landscape level. And that's, they'll do the near field, but less well on the far field, and the big deals there are water quality and the interactions with disease transmission, okay? And then finally, the marginal costs of compliance. Even where there is demand, it becomes much more difficult for small-scale farmers to participate because the marginal costs are much higher. All right, a quick sort of tour now of where we're at with certification. This is a global picture. So globally, we've been hearing statistics over the last few days, 6 or 7 to 11 million tons for different sectors that have been covered in talks. Global production of certified or rated, global production of seafood is around 200 million tons as of 2022. You can see the blue components here are the unitary certification, MSC, ASC, BAP, and fair trade. And then the green is the additional that's covered under actually the green, the purple, and the red are additional that are either under or being covered by SGRS schemes, okay? So the bottom line is that around 40% of global seafood production is covered by either certification or SGRS, with most of it being under SGRS. This is why we need the synergies. Let's have a look now at tilapia. The main demand, as I said, comes from the USA, around not far short of 200,000 tons in 2020. The European Union, a much smaller 33,000 tons. A lot of that will be for re-export as well. Not so much tilapia consumed in the UK, more in Europe, more pangasius. Main certification, the Aquaculture Stewardship Council and the Global Seafood Alliance for serving that American market, and Monterey Bay, as I said, for the SGRS. So ballpark figures, around 7 million tons of global tilapia production in 2021. It's mostly farmed. Outside, it's endemic African range, 96%. All right, around 5% of it was ASC or GSE BAP certified. Because of overlap between the two, that reduces to around 3.1 to 3.8 is probably of the total volume that's certified. Compare that with around 56% of salmon production, the most consolidated large-scale sector at the other extreme. All right, of that, that 5.1 struck 3.8%. China accounts around for 42% of that production, and Indonesia is somewhere behind it at 22%. As we'll see, Egypt is the next on the block, but no certification there, okay, because it's all domestically consumed. 2023, production fell to around 6.7 million tons. And I'm going to come back to this because there's so much certification in lakes. It's the environmental problem, the eutrophication, the disease that are causing these kind of dips. Also some other certification pattern trends in terms of scale that I'll come back to. So volume fell by about 30% to 238,000 tons in that year. Seafood Watch doesn't have the global range because it really focuses on the most important sectors. So it does around 6 sectors compared to ASC, for example, which does about 12 countries, but it covers them entirely. So that's about 1.6 million or 23% of global production. Just showing this graphically, you can see around 28% of, compared to that 40% of all seafood, 28% is certified or rated by, of tilapia production under certification or rating. And I've just highlighted the fact that Egypt, one of the biggest producers of tilapia, no certification, because there's no export, it's all for domestic food security, and those attributes that we said before of strong civil society pressures, a lack of affluence to pay for their costs, except these things combine, and so failure to create any demand or leverage through certification and those conditions. So let's just have a look at some of the coverage in terms of, I'm going to talk about certificate numbers, the number of entities, and the total volumes. This is certificate numbers. So you can see here, we've got 12 countries. I've shown the different types of systems that are certified. So we've got GSA BAP covers hatcheries, farms, processors, whilst ASC covers farms, and a feed standard is coming into operation, but it doesn't play into these figures yet. You can see that China has the largest number of certificates at the bottom. Now, I was just discussing this with Rohana and Wenbo in the break. This is a very sensitive issue. ASC has just announced in March that it's going to initiate a phase out of Chinese operations. This was in response to a company called Ocean Outlaw, an environmental journalist that identified labor abuses in processing in China. Going back to 2019, finally published in the New Yorker in last year, and ASC has now taken a decision to withdraw completely. What does that mean? We're not talking about the merits here of the veracity of the claims or otherwise. We're here more interested about the process, because if you withdraw from a market, you cease to have leverage to create improvement. And remember, these are third-party systems that are there to provide that kind of verified evidence. So that's the issue here. It's a big deal whether you stay in a market or pull out. All right? And I'm going to have to whiz forward a little bit now because I've just been told I've got 5 minutes. Okay. So let's go to the lakes systems. And so most of the certification, as I said, the highest volumes are in the blue here. So you can see Honduras, Mexico, Brazil. This is total volumes averaged over 2012 to 19. You can see the green area is the pond system, so Costa Rica and Ecuador. But most certification is large, vertically integrated operations exporting fresh product to America. All right, so Regal Springs is one of the biggest of those companies. You can see here their distribution, production in the Americas and Indonesia as well. Most important is Lake Toba. This comes back to what we were discussing yesterday. Although this is a single lake system, essentially you have hydrodynamically isolated embayments. This village called Harangal, it's wall-to-wall with cages. It's a subsystem. It's hugely eutrophic, whereas these are mesotrophic or oligotrophic, so much lower productive. Big companies go here because they've got the funds to go into more exposed conditions, 40, 50 meter depth here. It's very deep elsewhere. well, these are very sheltered, but overcrowding. So this is what happens in the absence of regulation. You get this kind of equilibrium, where suboptimal equilibrium, where larger companies are capable to go in the areas with larger carrying capacity, and then huge localized problems here. Okay, so you can see here, these are the large systems, the larger companies out in the main water, and this is the kind of concentration you get. This is Harangal wall-to-wall cages. Big problems with eutrophication and fish kills in these areas, multiple losses over the years, and huge variations on carrying capacity, but you have to have separate estimates for the different subsystems. That's the point that I'm trying to make here. All right, similar problems in Lake Yohoa in Honduras, the largest freshwater lake there. Regal Springs has got one of its biggest operations in this lake, similarly being pushed towards oligotrophic to mesotrophic, and it's also being pushed to a more nitrogen and phosphorus co-limited state as well. Both areas now, once you get to these problems, the government gets involved and it's proposed significant reductions in capacity in both systems. So far, still to be followed through on. Okay, but this represents a kind of existential risk, as you can see, going forward as these water quality problems, as the carrying capacity gets consumed in these systems, then, there is a challenge for larger companies to continue farming in these systems. And remember, they provide assurance around off flavors, etc. That's why you want to farm tilapia in these very clear waters. All right, so I'm just going to go through a quick performance of against the tilapia standard health requirements here. They're under the principle manage fish health and welfare in an environmentally responsible manner. There's 4 criteria with 11 indicators: stock recovery, survival as a proxy of health, chemical therapeutic use, mortality management, and having SOPs around a health management plan. Okay. I would say that both ASC and GSA BAP, remember, they're benchmarked against normative standards, formally through this thing called the GSSI. So you can see in blue here are the essential components. So any standard that's benchmarked is compliant with these health management requirements. So this is also broadly true, or I was going to say, of GSA BAP as well. All right, I'm just skip on, okay. All right, so just have a quick look then at the non-conformities. So we've got here looking at the broader non-compliance. So you can see these are a range of things. You can see that fish health is in red. So just to give you some idea of the proportion of non-compliance to other environmental concerns. Now moving specifically onto fish health, this is antimicrobial use, expressed as the use of active ingredient per ton of tilapia per year. So you can see big problems in Malaysia, big disease problems there as well, with usage of over 3.5 kilos per ton of production per year. And you can see the products that we've been talking about in wide use, chloramphenicol, amoxicillin, and oxytetracycline. Okay. All right, so survival, difficult one to get. ASC only measures survival above 100 grams to try and get more accurate, but you can see a big variation and performance, trend in performance at time. Ponds, it's hard to say, but it tends to look as though that the cages, it's hard to say from this data that the pond and cage differences are significantly different. All right, last couple of slides. ASC group certification has been one of the ways of trying to sort of bring smaller farmers into the fold. Key challenges, as we've said repeatedly, are the limited health management capacity, especially around diagnostics, record keeping, and the higher cost that it would take to get up to those assurance levels. And critically, when fragmentation, it's post-harvest, it's the assembly logistics for getting to sufficient quantities to make it interesting for intermediaries to assemble and export these products. So the response has been cluster or group certification options to lower costs. The main adoption has been for something called group certification without internal management system. This normally involves larger processors, etc., being the certificate holder and bringing medium scale, higher small and medium scale enterprises in that otherwise maybe not enter certification. So they provide some of the management coordination. less adoption of the with management system, because that puts a lot of burden within a smallholder cluster potentially to do the management themselves. All right, and then just finally, I'm just going to say that the cumulative, this cluster base also offers an opportunity, because there's a key challenge that we saw in Lake Toba when you've got lots of smallholders. If you're going to have a kind of ABM and area-based management, how then do you generate cooperation? Well, I won't go into the details, but this then leads into a kind of process for how perhaps you could get smallholder through enlightened self-interest, the larger companies with the leverage of certification potentially being removed to cooperate and mentor coordinated actions on health and water quality management. So just to wrap up, the main demand for environmental certification comes from companies looking to indemnify themselves from reputational exposure in more affluent jurisdictions with strong civil society pressures, which I describe as certification-centric markets. US is the largest importer, so the main demand, the main CCM, together with the EU accounting for 3.2% of global production in 2020, mostly certified by the 2 certification schemes in the SGRS I've mentioned. Coming from 12 countries for certified and 6 sectors, but only a small proportion, 126 countries, including the whole endemic range of Africa. I think there's a couple of certifications now online, but hitherto no certification in Africa whatsoever. And only 2 low to middle income countries are those countries as well. So again, the main concentration of smallholders completely outside the scope. I talked about the rating and certification synergies, including the scope and the rewards to individual performance together. And then finally, the smallholder barriers, the higher marginal cost for certification assurance, the larger preponderance of export-orientated production from lake systems, where eutrophication of the receiving water is a bigger problem than natural productivity of pond systems. And then finally, these issues around cooperation on group certification and AIPs between SGRS and certification, and how we can perhaps utilize this to go forward to bring these bodies into coordinated management for area-based management of water quality and health. And I'm sorry, I tried to squeeze a bit too much in there, but happy to take any questions if there's time.
Thank you, Francis, for your very comprehensive presentation. Certification has become much more important now. It's part of governance and soft power. And really nice presentation. Thank you. Now I would like to welcome questions from audience. Any questions?
Does environmental certification causes slight increase in cost of production? If so, how much percentage or what?
Well, that's a very good question. I think those kind of studies are kind of needed. I mean, but generally speaking, standards are calibrated, so the performance levels required for one species, one systems group will be calibrated against a median industry performance. So it may be that, you know, in a more mature, consolidated sector, the demands will be higher. So they're relative to the median performance. That means you will have part of your distribution that is below the existing median, which in whatever sector you happen to be working. And the idea is to try and encourage the lower part of the distribution to get up to the median. Then you review the standards and you make the requirements more conservative. So the bell curve keeps moving to the right. Okay, exactly how much the costs are. The marginal cost, as I keep saying, will be greater for smallholder farmers, because to make that median baseline, you're going to have to improve on your, to achieve your environmental performance, you're going to have to improve your health management requirements, potentially your waste management. You're going to have to audit energy consumption, etc. It all costs money, and it's relatively more expensive for smallholders.
Thanks a lot. I have also a question, because this third-party certification is considered as the most robust system. I've been working in third-party certification, and I was always concerned because we've just discussed the costs, and the costs are being paid by the producer who is getting certified, which, to my understanding, contradicts independency of the certification process itself. And why is there no different approach? Because if I pay you as a certifier, you are financially dependent on me. And therefore, there is, to my understanding, a conflict of interest which could be resolved if within the market, for example, the final buyer is paying for it and certification is then done and then it's really independent. And is there any consideration of this aspect within the whole discussion around third-party certification?
Yeah. Well, those points are critical to the credibility of the system, without which the whole thing would collapse like a house of cards. No credibility, nobody's going to buy it. Remember, it's a market-based form of governance. So you firewall different entities in that process. I didn't show it here, but there is a complete separation within this process of the standard setting, the standard holders, and the conformity assessment bodies must have nothing to do with the standard holders, ASC or GSC BAP. They are completely third-party entities. You know, you'll have heard of them, DNV, CUP, Bureau Veritas, a whole range of global companies. It's a whole different industry. They are audited by separate accreditation bodies with the risk of unannounced audits. So somebody could be along and looking at what you as an auditor are doing. So there's a whole assurance mechanism built in to address exactly the conflict of interest that you're saying, and that costs money as well. So the real issue is all these things are additive in terms of the costs of audit, aside from any label fees. But the conflict of interest is absolutely critical that it's addressed, without which no credibility, nobody would buy the standards. That's the third-party element. It has to be firewalled.
But still, the one who is receiving the certificate is the one who's paying for it, right?
Yeah, they're paying to be audited by an independent body.
True.
That has no skin in the game.
I'm just asking for whether there is a discussion around whether this can be shifted to make it completely independent.
I think there's going to be a discussion about alternative approaches. Jeharul is going to come on next and talk about a group-based. So maybe we can return to it after we see this slightly different paradigm.
Sorry, we run out of time. Thank you, Francis. Let's
Thank you.
applaud again. Thank you. Our next speaker, Stuart Bunting, independent climate change consultant from the UK, will talk about capturing the economic benefits of diverse, equitable, nutritious, and rewarding aquatic food systems. Please, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much. So, which one's that? Okay. So, just a quick outline for the presentation. Economic benefits of sustainable aquatic food systems. I'll look at joint financial and economic analysis, participatory problem analysis, and how to reconcile socioeconomic development with environmental and human rights protection. So when I think about economic benefits, I bring to mind the pillars of sustainable development. So in addition to economic development, we need to bear in mind we're striving for economic development, social development, and we must guarantee environmental protection, and sometimes that will require adopting the precautionary principle, so we avoid any undue harm. So it's also good sometimes to take a step back and gain a broader perspective on things. So we talked yesterday about moving away from a production unit, producer-centric approach, and I find it useful to take a broader perspective. So the Sustainable Aquatic Food Systems framework developed by the high-level panel of experts is useful in this regard because it helps us move away from focusing on, it helps us move away from focusing on production and farms to think more about value chains, also the environments that consumers find themselves in and the conditions under which they acquire aquatic foods, what might influence them in that regard, and how that influences diets that people enjoy or experience around the world, and how that could be improved potentially, and bearing in mind that the result of this is economic, social, and environmental outcomes, but also nutrition and health outcomes of aquatic food systems. And they don't operate in isolation, so there are various high-level drivers of change that need to be borne in mind, and governments and policies also influence what's happening in the system. So that's something else to bear in mind. Oops. So how to analyze or assess what's going on in these complex aquatic food systems. So the British Standards Institute in the UK issued guidelines and guidance on how to do carbon footprinting across value chains from raw materials through to consumers and disposal. So I had the opportunity to look at the cage-based salmon farming industry, halibut production, intertidal oyster production, and continuous long-line blue mussel cultivation in the UK, adopting this approach. So I met with key informants in the salmon farming sector, for example, and to understand where processes were happening across the value chain, so I could map this. Could also see what inputs there were, where transport was involved, and where wastes were being generated across the piece, really. So and to do this in a systematic way, so to label each of these elements. I'll get the hang of it. So then to look at the information gathered and to come up with overall carbon emission equivalent footprints for the production. But I think there's a huge amount of detail, but that's not the key point. Is you can identify hotspots here. So grow out feed inputs, a key contributor to salmon farming footprints, and then what people are doing in terms of preparation and cooking at home. So perhaps to focus on these aspects, to focus on these aspects, to really target and hone in on where you could make significant gains in the system, and to perhaps not to worry too much about what else is happening. So it enables you to focus your attention. So I took the opportunity to deploy this approach in small-scale farming systems in the northern part of West Bengal. We worked there with a team of researchers from CDHI, a local NGO, and we worked with small-scale farmers. They were dependent on common property resources drawn from the Buxa Tiger Reserve forest to feed into their overall livelihoods portfolios. And there were mixed farming systems, and they had subsistence consumption and also market sales. So this enabled us to picture what was going on in their system, and we were able to use a bioeconomic modelling approach to account for the costs associated, the activities they were engaged with, the costs for what they were doing, the economic benefits they were deriving from the common property resources, and then to work out costs and returns to their investments, and to provide a summary of all of this. So we summed all the costs, capital costs, what they needed to initial investment to set up the farming system, operating costs they incur on a yearly basis, ongoing basis, and then to derive some broad economic financial indicators. So we can see that a basic rain-fed farming system has a payback period of 1.8 years, and then this can be improved slightly by introducing fishing and then farming with a system of rice intensification potentially, with a small irrigation system, and then if fish was introduced, potentially that could increase or improve the payback period to 1.3 years with a slight degree of increased complexity to the system. So it might be an option for people to look at. With integrated farming systems, you can gain across the piece, really. You can benefit in aquaculture, agriculture, and for the environment. So you might have enhanced agrobiodiversity, and this can contribute to enhanced socio-ecological resilience. So there are a broad range of benefits of adopting these strategies. But you can get synergistic effects, so you get export crops potentially that can create employment, staple crops for food and nutrition security, enhanced ecosystem services, and potentially reduced stress for the shrimp. So perhaps that could be important going forward in terms of climate change, adaptation. And then in the Mahakam Delta, we looked at similar range of systems, traditional, extensive, semi-intensive, and integrated mangrove. Looked at the costs and benefits associated with these. So in taking into account the costs and benefits associated with different systems, we could identify or calculate the key indicators. So traditional system didn't seem to generate any returns. Extensive systems was marginal, semi-intensive, and then integrated mangrove system was better. So this is a potential advantage. And then we've looked more recently at the contribution of small pelagic fish species to direct human consumption and animal feed ingredients in the sub-Saharan African region to better understand biological and social impacts, the fish-based feed system. And to do this, we engaged with a broad range of stakeholders across 8 different countries. A bit lost. Yeah, so sorry. We engage with a broad range of stakeholders. Oh dear. So there was a representative process, and we also needed a process that was trustworthy and accountable. So we adopted a stakeholder Delphi approach. And oh dear. Oh dear.
Okay. Come with me. Sit here. Please sit down. Sit down. No problems. All right.
Thank you.
Should we call
Chairman will talk about revolutionizing small-scale aquaculture in India, sustainable nutrient recycling technologies and practice. Welcome, Professor. The floor is yours.
Where is this one? ให้เรียกหมอไหมคอแอมบูเลนซ์ออสันติผมว่าต้องออกไปทำแบบ Which one? How to open this one? Down. This is next slide? Yes. This is next slide.
Yeah, very good morning, all of you. First of all, I would like to thanks to all the organizers to invite me and share my thoughts. My topic will be revolutionizing small-scale aquaculture in India, sustainable nutrient recycling technology and practices which is carried out in India. So, as we know that in an agrarian country like India, the land resources are limited while demand of food is increasing day by day. So there is only one option right now in front of me, that is we have to look towards the water bodies, aquatic water bodies, to get the proteinous food in which we are deficient. So with this, I have come across some of the culture techniques which is existing practices in India, especially small-scale aquaculture and revolution turn into the modern aquaculture technology. How small-scale aquaculture technology can help in nutrient recycling and whether that will be appropriate than the modern technology. So my presentation outline will be need of improvement sustainability, potential of nutrients recycling in aquaculture, aquaculture expansion in India, sustainable traditional aquacultures, then introduction of modern aquaculture technologies, and main part is the nutrient recycling in aquaculture. How that nutrient recycling in aquaculture helps the microorganisms, and then socio-economic impact of aquaculture technologies in India, challenges faced by the Indian farmers, and outcome of this presentation. So we need to sustainability. Why we need the sustainability? As we know that the aquaculture major input is the feed. More than 50% of the total aquaculture production cost towards the feed, and which is the major factors which can pollute the environment, aquatic environment. Another one important aspect is the water and land availability is the most limiting factor in aquaculture, especially small-scale aquaculture. Then water quality is another one issue due to the intensified aquaculture systems. So if you have the a good water quality aquaculture, good water quality in the aquaculture systems, that will help to develop the sustainability. But due to the intensified aquaculture systems, by using the overfeed, that can create the culture systems. So we have to think towards the sustainability, how to develop the sustainability. So there are some potential nutrient recycling in aquaculture. You can see there are two main types culture systems in India, that is small scale aquaculture systems, and recently in last 1 decade, the modern aquaculture technology is coming up. But modern aquaculture technologies again depends upon the quality seed, quality feed, then technical know-how. But in case of the modern small-scale aquaculture technology, small-scale aquaculture systems, the farmers can use their own traditional knowledge to get the good production. So with this study evaluates the potential of nutrient recycling aquaculture technologies to enhance the sustainability and productivity of small-scale aquaculture in India. The objective is to address the challenges small and marginal farmers face by the introducing the modern eco-friendly alternative traditional practices. As you know that the nutrient recycling in aquaculture involves the reusing organic waste which can support to the growth of aquatic organisms, thereby the reducing waste and improving the water quality management. So there are some scopes how land use and aquaculture expansion in India. You can see the mangrove, how mangrove can involve in the aquaculture. The contribution of mangroves more than 5% overall aquaculture in India, and regional variation in Tamil Nadu contributes 0.5% and West Bengal 14.9%, which contribute in the small scale aquaculture. So agriculture land conversion, average conversion is more than 28% of agriculture land converted to the aquaculture. The regional variation in Gujarat and Andhra Pradesh having the 38% contribution of Andhra Pradesh of agriculture land converted into the aquaculture. And the mud flat utilization, primary land uses mud flats contributes more than 51% of the overall aquaculture areas, and which signifies the most utilized land use category for aquaculture. And therefore we need for the balance the sustainable land use for planning for the aquaculture. The sustainable paddy cum fish culture in coastal belt is the traditional farming systems in India. The optimal ecosystem utilization, which is a cost efficiency, cultivation practices is good, natural stocking is there, then chemical free cultivation system is there. Another one important aspect in the soil, that high organic carbons available nitrogen, potassium and sulfur contents, which have the low in availability phosphorus and magnesium content. Then during the harvesting, only rice ear had harvested, leaving the paddy stubbles to decay and create the natural niche for the growth of microorganisms and planktonic forage organism for the growth of fish and shrimp. Cost of rice production under these systems is generally lower than the cost of production in other single rice production systems. The tremendous microbial activity owing to the presence of large quantities of organic matters which is decomposed and which can be used as a food and filtration system in the water system. To ensure year-round income supports the diverse livelihood, empowers women financially and promotes sustainable agriculture. Where there are some area which can key challenges in this rice paddy cum fish culture, rice fish cultures. The key challenges are the labor, which reduces the labor to work in the pokali field, lack of mechanization, limited adoption of mechanization farm techniques, environmental challenges deteriorating the soil and water quality, youth disinterest, the youth are preference for other trade over pokali rice farming systems. And the nutrient recycling in rice fish culture is the small aquaculture technology based on the rice fish culture based on the nutrient recycling systems. So pokali field of Kerala integrate fish farming with rice cultivation, where fish waste which can used as fertilizers for the growth of rice. Another one aspect is the rice fish culture practice in Arunachal Pradesh relies on natural periphyton based systems which can help in the growing the rice stems, providing the significant food source for the fish also. That is periphyton, and another one is the biofilm based culture systems which can be carried out by using the pokali field culture or rice fish culture systems. Some of the socio-economic impacts of pokali rice fish culture systems. The traditional rice variety and prawn stocking have been replaced with the improved material, leading to a sustainable or substantial increase in economic performance. In Arunachal Pradesh has practiced rice fish culture for over 40 years using natural periphyton base on rice stems to feed fish without fertilizers, pesticides, or supplementary feed. That is a good advantages on the socio-economic point of view. The sustainable method supports the yield 250 to 500 kg per hectare per season, which integrating fish farming with rice cultivation and maintaining ecological balance. This advancement ensures year-round income, support diverse livelihood, empowers women financially, and promotes sustainable agriculture. In Assam, the farmers use a small seasonal homestead pond for nutrient recycling aquaculture, achieving more than 1,800 kg per hectare per year. That is a good production and significantly boosting the rural economy through the small-scale fish farming in Assam. Another one good technology which can be, which are using in some of the non-coastal states in India, that is low saline shrimp cultivation in India. As we know that India approximately 30 million hectares of land are salt affected India, including 6.8 million hectares are cultivated land in arid and semi-arid region of various states such as Punjab, Haryana, UP, Rajasthan, and Bihar. These states having salt affected, which cannot be used, that salt for that land is for the agriculture production. Hence, this land could be converted into the aquaculture point of view by culturing the saline shrimp, saline-based shrimp, that is especially shrimp or wanami. The characteristic of Indian inland saline water is the salinity vary from 0.5 to 5 ppt. Then comparison these saline water with the brackish water or marine water, the low level of calcium, potassium, and inconsistent concentration of calcium and magnesium. And this is inland saline water is generally unsuitable for commercial aquatic organism culture due to these characteristics. But by addition of calcium and magnesium in the water bodies can be suitable for culture, the wanami culture or shrimp culture. There are two case studies I'm going to present here. One case study is from the Punjab. The culture area brought under in 2017 by culturing the wanami shrimp or shrimp, 37 acres converted into a culture of shrimp. In 2018, 230 acres are brought under the culture of wanami, and in 2019, 350 acres, and 2020, almost 500 acres are brought under culture of shrimp. The stocking density of 25 to 30 PL per square meter, salinity less than 5 ppt in this area, and harvesting count was 30 to 40 number pieces per kg. FCR was less than 1.6, and culture duration was 120 days. Production 3 to 3.5 tons per acre, and marketing price was 300 to 450 rupees per kg. So this is a good case study, which is the land which is converted into agriculture land is converted into aquaculture practices. Another one case study is from the Maharashtra. The Maharashtra is away from this. This case study is a non-coastal area. The area brought under 0.5 acre. This is a demonstration purpose which is conducted by the Marine Product Export Development Authority. The stocking density was 85 pieces per square meter. The bore water was used as a source and having the salinity is 0.5 ppt. The culture duration was 120 days. FCR again less than 1.6, count 30 count, and production is 2.5 tons per 0.5 acres. But some advantages of low salinity courses, that is cheaper land and high profit, less problem with diseases, less Vibrio species, bacteria problems. Then again, zero water exchange is also occurs in these culture system, best growth rate with survival, good survival. But there are some problems with the low salinity. Extra cost is required to maintain the iron. That is, we have to add the calcium and magnesium. Low tolerance of very low salinities. Then supersaturation of groundwater remedy with settlement or aeration is required. Agricultural fertilizers runoff is another one problem. Salination of groundwater or soil is another good problems. Low survival due to the osmoregulatory stress occurs in the culture of shrimp culture in low saline water. Then there are some environmental benefits and social benefits. Utilization of barren land, the transform unproductive saline soil into productive aquaculture farms. Then reduction of water logging in this area, prevent water logging and secondary salination of using saline groundwater. Soil improvement is also possible by doing this shrimp culture in this area, enhance the fertility over time, making it more suitable for other agriculture crops after some years. Then economic viability, high returns. Shrimp farming offers higher returns compared to the traditional crops with potential yield at 8 to 10 tons per hectare per crop. Short growth cycles, shrimp can be harvested within 100 to 120 days, allowing for multiple crop cycles per year. Then another one, sewage-fed aquaculture systems, which is employed in the Kolkata. Farmers around the Kolkata city, India, developed techniques by using domestic sewage for fish culture almost century ago. In this culture system, there is no use at all the artificial feed. The technique of converting waste into consumable products through sewage-fed fish culture started nearly a century ago, with large-scale using beginning in the 1930s. The practice saw early success in the stabilized sewage pond, which were also used for vegetable cultivation, leading to its expansion to 12,000 hectare area in peak. But by utilizing treated sewage water to create a nutrient-rich environment for fish farming, converting waste into valuable resources while treating sewage. Sewage, locally known as berries, size can be 40 hectares pond size, depth is up to from 50 centimeter to 150 centimeter, and nature shallow and static large ponds sometimes become low-tech. The pond preparation, draining, removing silt, tilling, and preparing the dikes. This is pre-management practices required to start these sewage-fed aquaculture systems. Then primary fertilizers, process drying sewage from the canal into the pond. This pond is adjacent to the canal. The stabilization period will be 15 to 20 days. This period helps to initiate the photosynthetic activity for biological purification of the water. Here, sewage-fed ponds are pumped out the dry, and drying of ponds is undertaken during the winter season, and silt is removed. After drying, the silt is removed and least once in the year, once in 3 years. Dried water hyacinth is kept in heaps in the pond for decomposition, which act as a filtration and food to the fishes. Then photosynthetic activity, role of photosynthetic activity is biological purification of the sewage. Indicator water turns completely green. After getting the green water, you can stock the fishes. Preparation, testing water condition with fish, keep the fish in hapa, and you start the large scale stocking if the survival rate is positive. Normally IMC, exotic carp and tilapia prawns sometimes are doing the practices in sewage fed aquaculture systems in West Bengal. The frequency several times in a year based on the operation intensity. The fish production, the average fish production of the farm is more than 5 tons per hectare per year. There are some constraints in sewage-fed aquaculture systems which is facing in the farmers from the West Bengal, especially in the Calcutta. Integrated resources recover systems and waste recycling using peripheral wetland around cities are some of the planning concepts suggested to maintain the good environment around the urban areas. However, unfortunately, Kolkata wetland, which serve as the best example to the world on these concepts, are slowly begins lost due to the urban expansion without understanding the ecological, environmental, and economical benefits of these sewage-fed aquaculture systems. It is therefore there is opportunity to produce the fish and avoid environmental damage being caused by the discharge of untreated sewage. Urbanization pressures having since reduced the area to less than 4,000 hectares, severely impacting the livelihood for poor peoples depends upon these wetland systems. Some of the economic impacts of these sewage-fed aquaculture systems is Sewage-fed aquaculture culture system, century-old innovation using stabilized sewage pond to convert the nutrient-rich wastewater into natural fish feed, achieving yield 4.2 to 5.1 tons per hectare. Initially converting 12,000 hectares, now reduced to a few thousand hectares due to urbanization. These systems recycling waste, reduce pollution, lower feed cost, and provide employment to enhance productivity, community empowerment, and food security. Another one important culture systems which is carried out in the Kashmir regions, that is rainbow trout. These rainbow trout can be cultured in the raceway, recirculatory aquaculture systems, and other flowing water system or water culture systems. Fast growing, reaching 5 to 10 kg in a 3 years culture duration, highly carnivorous fish, and which requires very high protein. The water quality requirement for the raceway culture in the Kashmir Valley, DO 5.8 to 9.7 mg per liter, carbon dioxide less than 2 mg per liter, temperature 5 to 18 degrees Celsius, pH 6.5 to 8.5, total alkalinity 100 to 400 mg per liter as a calcium carbonate, water current. For the small fish or for the fingerling, it requires 2 to 3 centimeter per second, and for larger fish, 4 to 10 centimeter per second. There are some constraints in rainbow trout culture in Kashmir. High cost of commercial feed, because of this is a carnivorous fish, requires very high protein feed. Labor cost is another one important constraint in this area, and climatic condition. You can see the economic feasibility of trout farming in Kerala, which is published in these agriculture economics. The seed feed is the major cost towards, because of hatcheries and feed is not available in this area. So it is the major component of increasing economic cost. By considering the two systems, one is the raceway system and another one is the pond system, the BC ratio was 1.8. Both the systems found the same BC ratio, that is 1.8 and 1.8. Another one, integrated farming systems, which is employed in the Bihar. In Bihar, integrated fish farming practices are common, where fish farming is combined with livestock, and agriculture farmers typically rear fish in ponds alongside livestock like ducks and cattle, whose waste serve as organic fertilizers for pond. And there are some key advantages of resource optimization is possible by using the integrated farming. Waste from the livestock is efficiently utilized, reducing the need for artificial fertilizers. Increased income, farmers benefit from multiple revenue streams including fish, livestock, and crops. Sustainable practices, these methods promote sustainable farming by recycling nutrient and maintaining the ecological balance. Another one important culture system, that aquasilviculture, which is carried out in Sundarban in Orissa. In the Sundarban, a unique form of aquaculture known as aquasilviculture is practiced, combining fish farming with mangrove conservations. Fish and crabs are cultured in this brackish water area of mangroves by forests, and there are some key aspects which includes ecosystem preservations. That is, mangrove act as a natural biofilters, improving water quality and providing habitat for diverse marine life. Then livelihood security. These practices supports the livelihood of local communities, offering a sustainable source of income. Climate mitigation, mangroves sequester carbon, contributing to climate change mitigating efforts. There are some food process industry wastage can be utilized for preparation of fish feed, which can another one good advantages because of it contain more than 10 to 12% proteins. Protein enhancement content can be increased through the fermentation of these food process wastage, and the environmental and economic advantages of this wastage. Environmental impact, reduce waste flies, which is generated more wastage in this industry, mitigate environmental problems associated with the waste disposal. Then aquaculture benefit, address feed availability issue for aquaculture, then provide a cost-effective alternative to traditional fish feed. Some introduction of modern aquaculture technologies in Indian aquaculture industry, land-based biofloc technology is fish farming, which is carried out in West Bengal. A case study, biofloc technology revolutionized fish farming practices, then popularly gaining traction, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. Then participation 110 biofloc farmers selected from this list of 390. Demographics, majority young educated, least experienced small scale investors are involved in these systems. Then some of the culture practices most common, Oreochromis niloticus, Anabas, then Heteroptenes, the Clarius, Pangasius, and Hypothalamics. These species are used for culturing in the land-based biofloc units. There are some challenges faced over these by using this biofloc technology. Disease, a frequent outbreak, and mass mortality occurs. Then prevention and treatment, unsatisfactory strategies and measures. Synchronizing carbon to nitrogen ratio, CN ratio with microbial dynamics is another one challenge. Then only 13.6% highly satisfied by doing these practices, more than 62% dissatisfied but continuing these practices, and 23% highly disappointed using these biofloc systems. The role of microbials or biofloc technology, the biofloc technology is reduced the feed inputs as microbes act as a food as well as a filtration agent. In situ microorganism production, then techniques of enhancing water quality, recycling and reuse of nutrient in the culture medium is possible by using this one. The management of microbial loop in culture systems. So this is a thumb rule in case of these biofloc systems. So in biofloc systems, it is possible to reuse the waters, filtration of waters. This is a thumb rule that by providing the 1 kg of feed or 100 gram of feed, around 25% to 35% feed is accumulated at the bottom, which in the form of uneaten feed and fecal matters. So these fecal matters and uneaten feed can be change the water quality, which forming the ammonia. So we have to change this ammonia to nitrate, which can be less toxic, and this conversion is possible by introducing these bacterial population, that nitrifying bacterial and denitrifying bacterial population. Then some aquaponic production carried out in the Kerala states. Key findings of these: 60% of unit reported positive net operation income. Analysis based on income from the crops for fish versus cost of inputs. The challenges faced by these farmers: excessive labor charges, high cost of fish and feed. Then marketing constraint is another one important challenge in this area. Then finding from the interview with RAS farmers in Haryana. The significant challenges in Haryana, that is disease outbreak affecting 50% of the farmers. Seed availability is another one challenge. Lack of knowledge about recirculatory aquaculture systems. Then misguiding experience by the 5% farmers. Then seed transportation difficulties encountered by the 10% farmers. Then cage culture systems, which again important farming systems. As we know that in India, 3.5 million hectares water area available. Out of that, 2.1 hectares is small and medium larger reservoirs are there. Already there are 20,000 cages are installed in the reservoirs. More than 20 states introduced these cage culture systems and produce more than 50,000 metric tons. Commercial scale cage culture systems in India present mainly restricted to Pangasius and gift tilapia, and an average production is 2 to 3 metric tons per cage, having 6 by 4 by 3 meter cubic area of that cages. So this is the 2-3 demonstration we have carried out our faculty of our university in this Maharashtra. The appropriate adoption of enclosure cage culture technology offers enormous scope for enhancement of fish production. There are several key issues to be addressed by these systems. Then by using the cage aquaculture technology, we have established the fingerling bank in the floating cages, which can produce the fingerling size seeds and distribute it among the farmers. Yeah. So very high stocking density, we have used the, we have produced the fingerling by using the floating cages and distributed these seed to the farmers. Normally, this fingerling is produced by using the Indian major carps and distributed to the farmers. And farmers, they have started their culture systems in their earthen pond. And some of the outcome of this demonstration project, we underutilized resources are tapped, more than 100-acre farms are brought under the culture systems, and more than 500 peoples were encouraged to start to rear these Indian major carps in their water bodies. Out of that 500, 260 farmers started the rearing of IMs in their ponds. And state government agencies also encouraged, state fishery department and NGOs. Another one demonstration we have carried out by culturing the grow out of tilapia culture in cages. This is another one demonstration which we have established 20 cages in Maharashtra regions where the growing of gift tilapia is carried out in this area. Recently, delegates from the Chulalongkorn University visited these cage culture units, Dr. Channarang, Dr. Nopodon, and Dr. Aranya ma'am. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good afternoon.
Some open sea integrated multi-trophic aquaculture system is another one important aspect which is carried out in Kerala regions, in Karnataka. We will not go details. So this is outcome of this integrated multi-trophic aquaculture polyculture systems. You can see here the production IMTA and control pond. We can see here a mullet having 926 kg in earthen pond, whereas in IMTA, whereas in control pond 772 kg, and shrimp 781 kg, whereas in control pond 662 kg. Some socio-economic impacts of this open sea cage farming in India's east coast in integrate seaweed, finfish farming. Yeah. I will go directly towards the conclusion of periphyton-based systems, biofilm-based systems, then role of microorganisms, algal bacterial interventions as a management tools for aquaculture systems, nutrient recycling, as I already explained this one, the socio-economic aspects of modern aquaculture technologies. Yeah. There are main three types of outcomes from these systems: environmental benefits, economic viability, and socio-economic impacts. So due to the time limits, I could not able to present this one. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Chavan. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. We see a great diverse of systems and huge efforts to promote aquaculture sustainable development in India. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe one question. We have a limited time. I'd like to invite a question. Maybe one question from the audience. Any questions?
Just a small, you have given an extensive review of aquaculture scenario, small-scale aquaculture. One just supplementary information. Yes, you mentioned about this traditional pedifish culture in Arunachal Pradesh, though.
Yeah.
So there is only common carp because it's very cold temperature that feeds on detritus.
Okay.
Basically.
Prawn is also using in sewage-fed aquaculture systems in West Bengal.
In this Ukhrul area in Nagaland,
okay,
they also do in high terrace
Nagaland. Okay.
There they are rearing this rohu also. Okay. They also feed
that
on
I have not included here.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Chavan.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Now let me invite our next speaker, Melanie Hinderer from GAIS, Ghana, speak on Aquaculture Business School, a training approach to calculate your economics. Yeah, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much also for the organizers that I have the possibility to present to you today the Aquaculture Business School approach. Good morning to the ones online. Good afternoon to you here in the room. I'm working for GIZ Ghana and for the project called Agribusiness Facility for Africa, ABF. We are commissioned by the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development and have a co-financing with the EU INFPA and OACPS. The objective of our project is to contribute to economic and climate change resilience of agriculture value chains into food security, increased income and employment. And we have our main hub in Ghana, where the majority of the team is based at the moment. We have a smaller hub in Germany, and then one colleague based in Cote d'Ivoire, one colleague based in South Africa, and soon we have one advisor also in Kenya. And our project has 3 outputs. So the first output is focusing on skills for agribusiness, the second output on matching grant fund, and the third one on public dialogue and South-South exchange. Within the first output, Skills for Agribusiness, we have also an advisory help desk. And this advisory help desk is commissioned to support other projects within GIZ, but also beyond GIZ. So, for example, we have cooperations with the Belgium Corporation, Annabelle, or with various ministries of agriculture, whoever is interested in implementing large-scale agricultural training approaches. So they can come to us, and then we support those projects with the design of the training material and with the implementation strategy. And this is exactly what also happened with the global project FISH. So they approached us in 2021 it was, and they asked us if we can support in developing something for aquaculture. And we were very happy to do so because we have developed actually the predecessor program of ABF that was called SSAB. It was a regional project in West Africa focusing on cocoa farmers. This project has developed the Farmer Business School. And that was already in 2010, so a couple of years ago. And there was a lot of impacts achieved with this training approach. So other projects also wanted to have it adapted to their value chains. And that is why it went from West Africa, it was spreading slowly to all the other African countries, and it was adapted to various other value chains, and even to Asian countries. So we have 4 to 5 countries in Southeast Asia who are also working with the Farmer Business School approach. So there is a lot of experience there. Meanwhile, only in Africa, 1.9 million smallholders are trained in FBS. And we have also established a large network of master trainers. So we have roughly 120 African master trainers who also, some of them are working internationally, meaning they can also train trainers in Asian countries and even in the Caribbean and Pacific. So when the global project FISH approached us and we developed together this Aquaculture Business School, we firstly developed the material for Malawi. So that was the first country where the approach has been tested and implemented. And the first trainers have been capacitated. After Malawi, we then got a request from India, from our colleagues in Assam, from the Safal project. And last year, we were also able to conduct a training of trainer in Assam. And the master trainer was actually coming from Mozambique, so it was really a very international training. We have further demand from Madagascar, from Zambia, and from Zimbabwe, so we hope that also those countries will follow and we can continue in disseminating the ABS approach. So what is the Aquaculture Business School about? It's a large-scale training approach to strengthen the entrepreneurial skills of smallholder in the smallholder aquaculture producers or farmers, for more income from diversified production. So the concept is really large scale. That means we usually have a minimum outreach of 5,000 farmers or even more. And with that, you can really have a very cost-efficient training implementation. So the total costs for the training, if you have a minimum outreach of 5,000, are about 300,000 to 350,000 euro. This is including all the costs for the material development, for the adaptation, the printing, as well as the master trainer and training of trainer. You need to usually calculate 6 to 9 months for the preparation phase, meaning to conduct the economic analysis, to adapt the training material, and then to also do the training of trainers, so capacitate the trainers in the country. For scaling, usually 12 to 24 months are sufficient. This is depending on like the planning, how many trainers you have, but like one trainer can train about 450 farmers per year. Our approach is quite unique. First of all, it is decentralized. So that means the trainers are going to the communities and train the farmers in the communities. So we are not bringing any farmer to the capital, but it's really in the community. And the trainers are usually really quality trainers. So we invest a lot of time in the beginning in the capacity development of the trainers. So usually they are extension staff or like ministry staff. They can also be from the private sector. So people who really have experience with extension and who have experience with trainings. And they are then equipped with our kind of new methodology, because the approach we have is usually like very interactive. So there is a lot of group work in the training. There's a lot of discussion rounds, role plays, etc. And often in the countries, this is like a new approach. So most of the countries, they still use frontal teaching as the basic methodology, but our training is not about frontal teaching at all. The duration of the training is usually 5 subsequent mornings. So that means that the farmers are coming every morning to the training, and in the afternoon they go back to their farm, they can do their regular farm work, and then they come back to the training the following morning. So they would not miss any content, and they can still catch up with their daily farm work. We are also not providing any kind of lunch, drinks, snacks, etc. This is also quite unique, because usually development projects, they have a lot of money and they can always like invite everybody for lunch. But our approach is like there is no such thing as a free lunch. So we really want to tell them there is no lunch, like they are told beforehand. So what happened was that, for example, the women, they prepared already snacks, and then in the breaks, in the tea breaks, they were selling the snacks to their fellow participants, and they had income from the very first day of the training. The content of ABS is really more focusing on the economical part of aquaculture, so there is not really much on the technical side. That is why we recommend to have a technical training where you really go into detail of the technical good best practices of aquaculture beforehand. And then in the ABS training, the focus would be more on that the farmers understand how to do planning, on aquaculture farm economics and aquaculture farm management. There's also one module on healthy nutrition. Then the farmers are equipped with investments decision and strategies based on cost and benefit analysis for diversification and increasing income. There's one module on financial management and savings and credits. Then we have something for quality products, and very important also why it is good to work in groups and to be member of a producer organization. Yes, so coming to the training material. So we usually have one book for the farmers, so each participant is getting one hard copy. We also have 2 samples here. One is from Malawi, the other one is from India. You can also look at the booth later. There's also a QR code where you can actually download the soft copy. So each farmer is getting one. Then we also have posters. So each trainer is bringing one set of posters to the community, and this set is actually staying in the community, which is enhancing further discussions even after the training. And for the trainers, we have developed trainer guides. So this is really explaining the entire methodology for all modules, also with time indication, and what are usually the objectives of each module. So what should the farmers understand in terms of knowledge, skills, and attitude. Yeah, so here you can see the overview of the modules. So module 1 is more focusing really that farmers understand aquaculture is business. It's a business like any other. And then module 2 is more focusing on units and why it's so important to know the units. We heard a lot in the previous days that overfeeding is an issue and so on. So it's really important that farmers know their pond size and that they know how much inputs they are putting in the system. Module 3 is important in most African countries. For Asia, it can always be negotiated if it can be also taken out. But for Africa, it's really important because it's about the calorie intake per person, but also the nutritional intake. So how much protein, how much carbohydrate is for each person recommended. From module 4 onwards, we then really go into the economical modules. So module 4 is focusing on the cross-margin calculation of the current situation. So we do an analysis how the current situation of farmers is looking. And then this is brought into the training, and they can calculate how their current situation is looking like. In module 5, this is repeated, but this time with improved techniques. So we do the calculation with the best practices that have been promoted previously in technical trainings, how they actually reflect in a better cross-margin. And then module 6 is about diversification, because this is also a very important objective of the Aquaculture Business School. It's important to diversify the farm. We have heard about heavy rainfall events that have destroyed the entire tilapia harvest, so it's really good to have several farm enterprises. Module 7 is then more on the financial calendar, so when are the months when farmers really have to, for example, purchase inputs, and when are the months when farmers are receiving income from harvest. Module 8 is then financial services, how to get credits, loans, but also what is actually a saving account. A lot of farmers do not really know. Module 9 for Aquaculture Business School is more on improved feeding techniques and also management of feeding. And then module 10, I find it also very interesting and very important module, because here we do some calculations why it is beneficial to work in a group. So it is beneficial when you want to purchase inputs in bulk, but also when you want to sell your produce. Module 11 then is more on the long-term investment. So here we do a cash flow analysis and see how the long-term benefits are. And then module 12 is really becoming an entrepreneur in practice. As you can see, we are actually defining entrepreneur in a way that we include smallholder farmers. So we really see smallholder farmers as entrepreneur, as they are businessmen like any other. The backbone of all the training material is really the economic analysis. And with this one, we usually start the adaptation of a new, adaptation or development of a new curriculum. So without economics, it's impossible to do the training. I have brought you one example from Malawi, just to give you some ideas how the numbers for smallholders can look like. So the lead product in Malawi was tilapia, and for the current production, there was very little feed, minimal organic fertilizer used, stock density was around 2 fish per square meter, and high mortality rate was 30%. So yield was about 35 kilogram per 200 square meter pond. The improved technique, so the techniques that the project was promoting was about improved feeding with maize bran, then organic fertilization, stock density increased to 3 fish per square meter, a reduced mortality rate to 5%, also to a better observation of the pond, and intermittent harvest. And this resulted in 110 kilogram per 200 square meter pond. And if we now look into the economic data, we see that the gross margin was raised from $35 in the current technique to $176 in the improved one. So you can see, even for smallholder farmers, aquaculture can be a good business source. Of course, the training material was then, or is designed in a way that the smallholders can really follow and can understand the calculations. So it is designed in a way that is very simple and that they also understand what buttons to press on the calculator. Often it's the first time for them to use a calculator. So we really give very detailed instructions what to do. And in the training, they would do those calculations in groups, so they can support each other during the group work and then come up with the overall result together. For later, so after the training, we are providing in the annex some templates that they can use in order to do the calculations on their own farm. All right, then I would like to share with you another example from India, from Assam. So I mentioned earlier that it is really important in the Aquaculture Business School that we do not focus on one farm enterprise only, but that we promote diversification. So we always look at 3 enterprises. In Assam, following products have been chosen. So we have the carp as the first product, the lead product, rice as the second, and duck as the third. If we look at the carp production, so the current scenario was like the traditional methodology. Stock density was about 1 fish per square meter, mortality rate high with 20%. And then the improved technique was that they were fed with rice bran and oil cake. There was more fertilization, and stock density in this case actually decreased to 0.8 fish per square meter, and mortality rate also decreased to 8%. And for Assam, that resulted in a yield increase per pond. So 1 biga is usually the pond size in Assam, and that is like from 400 kilogram per biga to 520 kilogram per biga. If we now only look and compare the improved techniques for the 3 farm enterprises, carp, rice, and duck, we can see that the aquaculture is actually performing really, really well. So if you have a look at the gross margin, for rice, it is okay. It's $85 per hectare. For duck, it would be $203 for 40 ducks. And then for the aquaculture, for the carp production, it's $369 per biga. So also in India, we see that aquaculture is really profitable for the farmers. Yeah, and then in the training material, we have, of course, redesigned it a bit, so to really make it understandable for the smallholders, and also we usually leave some of the stats blank so that they can do the calculation themselves in the training. Another topic that was especially discussed yesterday in the afternoon with digital solution and AI, we, of course, also try to take it up. So we try to constantly improve and renew our training approaches and stay up to date and, modern. So what we thought of was introducing more digital training material. And we have developed an e-academy. It's called Agribusiness e-academy, and it is hosted on the Atingi platform. The Atingi platform is the official e-learning platform by the German corporation, and it is for free, so everybody can access. You just need to have an email address, and then you can register for free. And at the beginning, we thought, of course, we are designing content on the e-learning platform for smallholder farmers, no problem, everybody will access, and we have a huge outreach. Yes, was a good idea, but there are some restrictions, especially in Africa, where we have really low smartphone rate for the smallholders, and also still in most of the rural areas and most of the African countries, network problems is a big issue. So we soon realized, okay, we cannot focus too much on the smallholders in Africa as our target group. So we changed a bit our strategy, and what we did is we are focusing now more on the trainers and master trainers. So that means in order for a trainer to be certified, he or she has to go through the e-learning courses, hand in the certificate. That means in the face-to-face training of trainer, we can then really focus more on the didactics and the methodology of like how to facilitate a training. So we do not need to focus too much on all the theory background. And this is what we also call blended learning, so that we have a good mixture between e-learning and the face-to-face. If you are interested, here's the QR code that is directing you to our Agribusiness e-academy. Please do not do the courses now, but wait for the lunch break. But what I would like to show you is, because we have also integrated some examples from aquaculture, and we have done a comparison because like the course is really focusing also on higher economics, so it is designed really for trainers and extension agents who have some background in economics. And we have done a thorough analysis of cash flows of various products. And what was very interesting to see, if you compare cashew with an annual crop production, which includes irrigation, and if you compare it with aquaculture, in this case tilapia, you can see that the cumulative balance of cashew, which is like actually a cash crop, so you would grow it in order to receive cash, is actually really low. So you only have a cumulative balance after 22 years, because this is like the usual cycle of a cashew plantation, of 10,229 euro. If you compare that to an annual crop that is irrigated, you have a cumulative balance of 102,000 euro. And if you compare that with aquaculture, after 22 years, so that is, some cycles of aquaculture, you actually have 131,876 euro. So also in this analysis, it shows that aquaculture can be profitable for smallholder farmers. But of course, it always depends. It always depends on the context. It always depends on the production system. And I have now listed some success factors that influence the success rate of aquaculture for smallholder farmers. So most important is, are cooperatives existing? Are farmer groups existing? Are they organized? Are they doing their business together? And does the cooperative offer some services for their members? Next important point, and I think we have discussed it also in the last days, inputs, are they available? Is feeding available? Are trucks available? Are they also affordable for the smallholder farmers? Or does it maybe make more sense, like in Malawi, that we do not go with the professional feeding, but actually with maize bran? So extensive versus intensive production system comparison is really important in order to come up with the best solution for the smallholder farmers. On top, I think this is also really relevant in the African continent. The location of the farm, is it close to a main road, so could direct marketing be possible, or is it maybe in the middle of the bush and you need already 2 hours to access the main road? Market access is very important. Also, are there cooling chains available? What kind of product is demanded on the market? Is it a fresh product? Is it a dry one? Then stocking density, what is the best optimum stocking density in order to make most profit? Pond size, of course, very important. Then if farmers are actually doing their farm records and planning, and if they are applying the best aquaculture practices. Last but not least, I would like to give you some insights into the impacts that can be achieved if you implement the Aquaculture Business School. So first of all, you usually reach a mindset change. So you have a transition from aquaculture as destiny to aquaculture as business. You usually have a more personal freedom that you can observe within the smallholder farmers, and they are able to do informed decision-making and investment decisions. And the professional ethics are changing, and they see themselves more as entrepreneurs. There was an income increase observed between 27% up to 5,900% in Malawi. So there was just recently a evaluation study conducted. However, this data has to be treated carefully because some of the farmers never have done records before the training, so we do not know how reliable their actual baseline was. But what was observed was, of course, the income diversification. Also, better balanced nutrition for the families was observed. Then they are diversifying their crops more and using improved seeds or floating feeds. Then there's a higher efficiency and better quality of the production. And last but not least, the Aquaculture Business School is preparing the ground for business-driven professional producer organizations. And with this beautiful picture from Lake Malawi, I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Melanie, for your great presentation. Really nice knowing all the work you did promoting aquaculture. Now I'd like to invite questions from the audience.
Thanks for the presentation. You mentioned the more interactive style of transferring knowledge to the farmers, and you mentioned group discussions or group work, and calculation, for example, doing jointly, and then you mentioned role plays. Can you elaborate that a little bit further? So which modules or which topics can be transferred by role plays, for example?
So it's not that the entire module is transferred by a role play, but for example, module 10, which is focusing on the producer organization, we have a very nice play. So we are selecting 5 participants who need to go on one side and then 1 participant who is going on another. This one person should be a very strong and big one. And then they get a rope and they need to do the row, how do you call it? The rope tagging, tug war. And you always see, no matter how strong this one person is, the group will always be stronger. So this is like one of the pictures that really stays in mind of the smallholders and always reminding them, okay, it's better to work in collaboration and in a group.
And one second question, you mentioned the master trainers and that you invested a lot in their education. How do you select them and make sure that they are, let's say, that they use the methodology properly and that they really calibrate themselves in order to have a high level of quality throughout the master trainings, which they are transferring to the trainers in the country?
Exactly. So for the master trainers, those are usually persons who have worked since long time with the approach. So usually they start as a trainer. And then we get to know that we have like a very motivated person here who wants to go on a master trainer level. And what we are doing from ABF side, we are regularly offering master training programs. So they can apply for this master training program. It's completely sponsored by us for now. However, we also have an exit strategy, so we want to slowly transition to an association, and then in the future, this association should take over the master training program. And this is like usually a one-year program, including some workshops where they all come together and also have possibilities to exchange. But then they also get some assignments for their home country, so they need to conduct the training of trainer under supervision in their home country and hand in reports and so on. And if this is all fine and the final grade is acceptable, then they are usually certified as master trainer. For the trainers in the countries, we also have usually criteria, so we share this with the implementing projects, what to think of when you want to select trainers. So it's usually good to have a good mixture between freelance consultants and extension workers or workers for the ministry. If you only go with ministry staff, it can be that they are usually very occupied, so sometimes it's difficult to then reach your target. But if you have a good mixture, you can really ensure that on the one hand, you have some anchoring of the approach in a local organization, but on the same time, with freelance consultants, you also make sure that you really reach the numbers that you want to train.
It's a very interesting topic. What, in your opinion, based on your experiences, are the factors that lead to success or failure of the aqua business fencers?
You mean the success on business for the smallholders?
You are trying to upgrade them from, say, a subsistence activity to a business model. So not all will succeed in that, you know. Any business has its own, its own prospects as well as its risk factors, and then, so what are the factors that will affect the success of the people while transition from subsistence activity to a business activity, successful business activity?
I mean, this is now depending how you define a businessman. So when is somebody a businessman? Because even if you're doing subsistence, usually you always have a small portion that you would sell, maybe to your neighbors or to friends. So what we observed in our studies was that the adoption rate is usually very high. So we have about 70 to 90% adoption rate, so that they actually work after the training with the tools that they have provided within a training. However, of course, they are free to do bad business, they are free to do good business. So we only provide them with the tools and the knowledge. What they do later out of it, it's their choice. So we do not say, but you have to become now a successful businessman. It's impossible. But what is also really important, that you also do a very good post-training support and follow-up. So we have observed in contexts where there was no post-training support and the trainer did not go back after a while to the community and asked if there was like some difficulties or some problems that occurred, then the adoption rate was lower. So this is really important that farmers are not left behind, but they are regularly checked up and that there is further support after the training provided.
Okay, one more question, maybe. The final question. Yeah.
Thanks for this, very good presentation. So point is like we have also been into this promotion of, income-generating activities and then graduating to micro-enterprises for quite some time, almost for 20 years now. But the point that I want to make is we have often come across different communities who are not really motivated by money alone, right? So what do you do in that case? And when we look at their perspective, we also see that the other aspects of sustainability, the social aspects, the environmental aspects, right, the risk reduction areas, they become very important for these people. They do not want to put all eggs in one basket. They want to diversify, right? And while I appreciate that since you have also diversified the entire thing. But what has been your experience in this way?
So our experience is that you usually, like what we do or what the trainers are doing, they should go to the communities at least 1 week before the training starts. And they do some groundwork. So they inform like the head of village or however in the context, however it is structured. So in Africa, you usually have like the village chief, and this one would be approached, and then the training approach would be presented, and also explain that there's no lunch, no participation fee or anything. And this usually works quite well. So we have usually more demand that we have space. So often the trainers have to go back to the same community and do the training again because not all of the community members were able to participate in the first time. Regarding the 3 dimensions of sustainability, we always take it into consideration. And for FBS, what we have developed now in last year, together with a program in Namibia, was the FBS Climate, that really focuses on each module, again, on the climate adaptation, climate mitigation aspects, to really make sure that whatever we are promoting is sustainable and is actually either contributing to mitigation or at least to climate adaptation.
Okay,
Thanks.
You. Yeah.
Sorry. I have a question, sir, if you permit. I had raised hand.
Yeah, okay. Maybe the final one, please.
Yeah. So thanks, Melanie, for this. On the similar lines, I can imagine about livelihood school. I won't add business, but it will be part of it. So building on the question that he raised, one of the communities which is dominant in India is the landless, resourceless communities. They are 60% in number. And agriculture or farming is a long haul for them. So livestock, definitely small ruminants, even if they are doing agriculture, it is on a leased land, marginal. Even the marginal farmers' holdings are very low. Small holders are also having very small pieces of land. So in that case, farming is one activity. Livestock could be the another activity, which we have seen is the bottom line. I mean, it is the denominator with the most vulnerables. And the third activity could be non-farm. So are you also venturing into the non-farm when you think about livelihood school of sorts? Thank you.
So you mean if like non-farmers are also participating? I cannot say yes or no, but usually it is targeted for people who are into farming already. But for example, in the case of South Sudan, where we have a lot of refugees and a lot are living like in refugee camps, they are still doing this training, the FBS training in this case, also for those refugee camps, because what they have is at least like a small backyard garden. And I mean, it's at least something, even if it's very small scale.
So non-farm can also be thought in the form of some place in the value chain, even if they are not farming, but...
Okay. So you mean for other actors?
Yes.
Yes. So besides the Aquaculture Business School and Pharma Business School, we have also other training approaches. So one is, for example, focusing on processing as business, and this is targeting then more groups who are into processing, which is often women groups. We have also one training approach focusing on cooperatives and how cooperatives can improve their management, but also the business services for their members. So we have a variety of training approaches that we offer, but this always depends like who is the target group, who does the project want to reach.
Okay, thank you. We have to stop. If you have more questions, please discuss with the speakers during coffee break or after lunch. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to give a mic to Dr. Jahar for some.
One last answer to the question asked by Nirmalya to Melanie, and Melanie answered. It is area specific. When she said that during the training no food was given, it was not entertained. But when we asked the question similarly to our government partners in India, in Assam mainly, under the MOD, Ministry of Rural Development, State Rural Livelihood Mission is working with us for this project. They said, no, you don't worry. Our women cluster, they have their own products. They will bring it up. They will see that food and water, everything is provided. So I think that varies according to the culture and area to area. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone.
Yeah, thank you. We apologize for Dr. Stuart will not continue his presentation. He feels better, but as suggested by Doctor, he will take a rest. And that's all presentations. Thank you all the speakers and thank you for all the discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. I have some few announcements to make. Thank you so much. We will continue this session, the technical session 5, with speaker 3 after lunch. And those who are speakers for technical session 6, please contact our staff to share the PowerPoint presentation. And lastly, we will have a QR code for the evaluation form. And it closes at 2 p.m. if you guys are interested in winning a lucky draw prize. So please make sure that you fill out that form before 2 p.m. And the lunch will be served outside in a dining area. And please be back in this room at 1:55 p.m. Thank you. Enjoy your lunch.